Well, the ONS figures were released on Thursday for gross and net migration from the year May 2022 to the year May 2023. And it's fair to say that the values make for fairly stark reading. The gross figure of people immigrating into the United Kingdom last year stood at 1.2 million, whilst the net figure, minusing the people that left the United Kingdom, stands at 606,000. Firstly, it's important to note that the government cynically released multiple times to the media that the figure could have been as high as 700 or 800,000. And this was a bid by Rishi Sunak to manage expectations so that the release of the figure that stands at 600,000 would not seem so destructive, so bad. And this is in line with his policy to blame the problem on his predecessors as a crisis that he inherited rather than a crisis that he has caused. Finally, it's important to state that the figure could have been as high as 700 or 800,000, perhaps approximately 730,000, if the method used to count the numbers was the same as the method they used last year. Either way, this figure is in stark contrast to the consecutive Conservative Party manifesto promises from 2010, 2015 and 2017, and even Boris Johnson promising to reduce the numbers but refusing to state what to in 2019, to the tens of thousands. Either way, when you break down the numbers, 150,000 were immigrants from the EU and 300,000 were immigrants from Ukraine and Hong Kong. And whilst this is a scheme that no one would dispute is fair and just, it's significant to note that now a house is needed to be built every 7 minutes to cope with migration alone. Last year, 240,000 homes were built, and this shows that the figure of people coming into the UK, which now stands at 1.2 million, is not sustainable. In terms of for the economy, the problem is no less destructive. The ONS last year estimated that the number of migrants coming into the UK would stand, the net figure would be 245,000. And though this was half of what the actual figure was, they predicted that this would benefit the economy to the tune of 0.08% on GDP growth. And of course, when you have a larger workforce and more people in the economy, of course the total gross domestic product is going to grow. However, GDP per capita and quality of life will not. Furthermore, cheap migrant labour is detrimental for the domestic population as it leads to the compression of their wages, but also it decreases big business, their investment into mechanisation, and in turn decreases productivity over the long term. The points-based skilled system has been eroded so much by Boris Johnson that now migrants are eligible to qualify and migrate into the UK even if they earn £8,000 less than the minimum wage. And this means that half of all vacancies in the UK are now open to cheap migrant labour, even at a time when we have 5 million people on out-of-work benefits. Finally, Rishi Sunak's acknowledged the problem is fairly stark. From post-war 1950 to 1997, until Blair opened the door to a fairly loose immigration policy, net migration ran at 30 to 40,000 a year. However, now, in the last 20 years, we've had a population growth of 8 million, 7 million of those thanks and due to migration. However, I would point out that Rishi Sunak's crackdown on students specifically will not work, because while he's trying to crack down on their dependents, you can't crack down on students themselves because of how they contribute to UK universities. And under Article 8 of the ECHR, it's impossible, therefore, to crack down even on their dependents, because once students have settled in the UK after their course, they, like everyone else, have the right to a family life, and as do their dependents. So his position and his policy is not tenable. However, even now, Keir Starmer has acknowledged that the numbers need to come down, And that is why I'm calling for there to be cross-party consensus and a cross-party support for policy making to tackle this problem.